Audio check. Audio check. All right, great. All right. Hello, everyone. Said I'd be starting streaming right around 7. I'm going to give people just a minute or two to trickle in, and I'm going to leave the deck list that I'm thinking about playing up here. In just a minute or two, I'll start talking about the deck list and, why I'm making the changes that I'm making. If you haven't taken a look at my article from today about the red-white taxes build data over 111 matches, that might be a good thing to just kind of skim over in the next minute or two. Even if you just kind of skim towards the end and you take a look at the matchup win percentage chart, that might give you a good sort of context for the changes that I make for this build. Tonight we will be playing 3-color taxes. Additionally, to the red, we're also going to splash for an Orzhov Pontiff in the board. Alright, I have a question about Palace Jailer. I'm on mono white and I haven't liked it. What is your opinion? I am less sold on Palace Jailer in the mono white build than in the red white build. In the red white build, since you have 4 drops off Vial, you're already pretty okay with ticking that Vial up to 4. Whereas ticking the Vial up to 4 for Palace Jailer in the white build means that 100% the Ether Vial is dead there. So, like, you can't do anything else with it in that build. So the Palace Jailer will start drawing you cards, but you usually start by invalidating one of your own Ether Vials. In addition, I like it more in the red-white build, because with Magus, sometimes you'll cut your opponent off of mana, and then you'll get a Palace Jailer in play, and they can't cast anything, and you're drawing a bunch of cards, and that's great. Or alternatively, you Palace Jailer, the next turn you put in a Pia and Kira, you've created 3 bodies, and now you have a whole bunch of chump blockers that aren't going to allow your opponents to get through and steal the Monarch title from you. So I think it's a little bit better in red-white than in mono-white. So this is essentially what we're looking at. Starting with the mana base. Oh, some of my changes from earlier didn't save. Sorry, one sec. Let me make sure everything else is as I intended. Yeah, okay, everything else looks right. Okay, so starting with mana base, if I'm going to play the Orzhov Pontiff, I want at minimum 3 sources that can go and cast it, in addition to just being able to vial it in with Ether Vial. So I am going up to a 3rd Cavern of Souls for this build. In order to do that, I have dropped down to 3 Rishadan Port. And I know that sounds kind of like blasphemy, because Rishadan Port is an absolutely absurd magic card, and the ability to deny mana to basic lands is really, really good. But you have to make a concession somewhere if you're going to get really greedy with your mana. And I am. The other thing I could consider is cutting one of these plateaus for a scrubland. And if I did that, I would have 5 fetch lands that could go and fetch the scrubland in order to get Pontiff. But then that's one source that can't be used for, casting Magus or Pia and Kieran, and it also doesn't work for Pia and Kieran's activated ability, and that side of the equation does not work off of Cavern. So with Cavern, you can put P and K into play, but you can't start flinging Thopters and Ether Vials everywhere if you're doing it off of Cavern. So I actually didn't want to decrease the number of true red sources in my deck for that reason, which is why when I added a Cavern of Souls, I didn't take away a Plateau. Let me get to the sideboard in just a minute. I'm going to work through the rest of the main deck first. So the other main deck thing I'm going to try out here is running the Marin Crusader in the main instead of the sideboard. Previously, this was the Rest in Peace that was in the main deck. The reason I want to move the Crusader here is my numbers against Grixis Delver and against Checkpile weren't necessarily as good as I would like, and Rest in Peace is a fine card there. But against Checkpile, just having a Marin Crusader to tutor up in addition to P and K and Palace Jailer should probably give me enough different ways to attack Checkpile when I have Magus of the Moon as well, that at any given time I can probably tutor up something that they can't necessarily deal with. I also noticed that I was a little light on bulk in this build, and what I mean by that is stuff that just gets into the red zone. You know, if I take away this as a creature and this was a Rest in Peace, you know, Thalia is great in combat. Wingmare and Flickerwisp have flying. P and K produces flying tokens, but there's not a lot of things that just beat through the ground unless you have equipment. And so I want to try out a Marin Crusader in this slot rather than the Rest in Peace in the main. I don't necessarily think the Rest in Peace was bad. I in fact quite liked it. But as a starting point for this list, I think I want to have the Marin Crusader in the main deck. Looking at the sideboard now, a lot of things have changed here. The first thing I'm going to do is cut Path to Exile for a Blessed Alliance. Now, in case you don't know what this does, because it's like a standard card, it's a modal card, and it costs 1 colorless and a white, and it can escalate. That is, if you pay 2 more colorless mana, you can pick an additional mode. So the modes are gain 4 life, untap up to 2 target creatures, and target opponent sacrifices an attacking creature. And you might go, well, Phil, why are you playing that? That costs 2 mana, it seems bad with Thalia, and it's probably just worse than a Path to Exile in a lot of cases. And the answer is yes, yes it is. However, this is a card that can kill a True Name Nemesis if my opponent attacks in with it. And one of the things I noticed in my testing is that this deck is just cold to True Name Nemesis. In the previous iteration, I had literal 0 ways to get True Name off the table. Blessed Alliance will do a lot of the same work that a Path to Exile will do against many regular creatures, but this gives me an out to True Name. This card can do some really, really weird things when you escalate it, and this is also a card that will be really good to board in for the burn matchup, which is abysmal, and so having a little bit of extra utility there is nice. You know, if I pay 4 mana and gain 4 life and make them sacrifice an attacking creature, that's amazing. Or even just on my, like, if I turn 1 Ether Vial, turn 2 Blessed Alliance to gain some life or something like that, or make them sacrifice an attacking creature, like, those are all fine modes. This can also be a big blowout card in the burn matchup, because if your opponent thinks you're dead and they just like try to Fire Blast you, you can Blessed Alliance in response and get them. Since we moved up to, or excuse me, since we removed the Rest in Peace from the main, one of them gets bumped to the sideboard here. That's pretty straightforward. And then I added in Orzhov Pontiff to the sideboard. Again, this is another card that can be an out to True Name, which is something that I want to do. And it will be good against a lot of the random matchups of the format. You know, when I play against something like Tess or Belcher that creates goblins, this is an out to that. When I go and play against Elves or the Mirror, this card can be cripplingly good. It's a card that won't necessarily be easy to cast. You know, there's the 3 natural caverns for it, but I'm really intending to Ether Vial this card in. That is my primary game plan for this Pontiff. Yeah, good to be back. I need to take this call real quick. Sorry, this is embarrassing, but this is from work, and it's probably saying I'm getting a delay. No delay yet, but potential delay. All right. Yeah, good to be back. So I didn't stream this weekend because I was at Ichiban Con, an anime convention in North Carolina. Had a bunch of fun, went to a bunch of panels, got some great anime recommendations, went to a J-pop concert. It was a great weekend for me, but that meant no streaming. And I intended to stream last night, but I was just wiped after the con. All right, let's see. What does the chat say here? I feel like Pontiff and Spark Mage do almost the same thing, in addition to you saying that you had reservations about Spark Mage. Yeah, Spark Mage is really close to the cutting block here. This Spark Mage could maybe be the Sanctum Prelate that I cut from the deck instead. So from the sideboard, I cut Mirran Crusader and Sanctum Prelate, and I switched the location of the Mirran Crusader and the Rest in Peace. And this Cunning Spark Mage can maybe go. But like, if I get rid of it, what do I want to put in? Do I want to put the Sanctum Prelate back in that has been, sort of awkward and not necessarily as good as Magus of the Moon? Do I want to put a third Recruiter of the Guard in that slot? I'm not sure. I think I'll probably play with Spark Mage for a little bit longer. Like, relatively speaking, I didn't mind having him in the deck. He didn't win me any games, but if I play against Infect, Elves, the Mirror, like, there's plenty of spots where it would be really, really good. You felt a big hole when I took a break? Yeah. I went really hard with streaming last week, just kind of getting the stream established and started. And I won't necessarily stream like 8 times a week or whatever ridiculous amount that was. I also had a couple of snow days as well. But generally speaking, I will be streaming more than I did in the last couple of days. 4 or 5 days of nothing is probably not going to be the norm around here. So this is what I'm thinking about running. If you have any other suggestions or ideas before I start a league with this, I'm happy to hear them. Because again, I'm not thrilled with this Spark Mage. The question of whether or not this Mirran Crusader should be a Rest in Peace or some other card is a fair question. And, it's also possible that I should run a Scrubland as well over here, just to make casting the Pontiff more reasonable. But, if I run that Scrubland, there are real costs elsewhere in order to do so. I think everything else here is pretty reasonable and largely a port of the red-white build that I have been playing previously. Sword of War and Peace, question mark. I don't know that the red-white version needs Sword of War and Peace. Like, for example, let's just take a look at how we would board for the Mirror. Like, for the Mirror, we'd want to board out these Thalias. We'll probably board out the Magus, and boarding out Vryn Wingmare and maybe Palace Jailer. Like, Palace Jailer is sort of, so-so. It has really good upside when it works, but it is definitely the sort of thing that can backfire with all the moms that are on the board and all the Aether Vial shenanigans. So, like, this is 8 cards right here. What do we have to board in already for this matchup over on this side? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 7 really good, powerful cards for the matchup, meaning that I would keep either Vryn Wingmare or Palace Jailer in the deck. So if I cut the Cunning Spark Mage for Sword of War and Peace, I'm not necessarily gaining a slot for the mirror. Like, it's fine. It would probably be about interchangeable. Both pieces are tutorable in different ways. But my win percentage against the mirror with the red-white version was already really good. I I forget without looking. Let me pull that up here, but I think it was something absurd like 8-1 or something like that. Let's see. Red, white, D&T versus D&T. Yeah, I was 5-1 against D&T. So I don't know that I necessarily have to put Sword of War and Peace in the deck. I guess it would be a reasonable card to also board in versus Miracles and check pile as well. My previous build was one card short of what I wanted against Miracles. So Sword of War and Peace over Cunning Spark Mage might be reasonable. So let me resort this. So what would I do against Miracles currently? So against Miracles, I pull these Swords to Plowshares as my starting point. And so then I'd want the Cataclysms, and I'd want the P and K. I'd probably board in the Relic Warder, even though it's kind of mediocre. So if I start by boarding out those 4, and I also kind of think Palace Jailer is a little risky, then I'd want to board one more card in against Miracles. And I could do something like board in a Canonist. If I put the Sword of War and Peace in here, then I could do that over the Spark Mage. And that would be fine. How do I feel about Spirit of the Labyrinth? Spirit of the Labyrinth is a fine Magic card. I've always found him sort of awkward. Like, it doesn't... When it works, it can just win you the game, but it trades very poorly in combat against decks like Grixis Delver, where, like, their 1-mana cards trade for it, or, like, their Young Pyromancer tokens trade for it. And the red-white build already isn't rumbling particularly well. Like, unlike the mono-white build that I'm playing, where I just have 4 Mirran Crusaders and, 4 Flicker Wisps and bring Windmare, like that, so I can just get in the red zone really, really easily. The red-white build has more utility built into its creatures at the cost of some aggression. So I don't know that I want to play a card like Spirit of the Labyrinth, where it isn't going to just attack into creatures very well. You wouldn't cut Jailer versus Miracles? I'm really worried about Jailer versus Miracles. Like, when you run... In the post-sideboard games, you want to board out your Swords to Plowshares most of the time because they're not particularly good. And what that means is you don't have creature removal anymore. So if your opponent just does something stupid like Swords to Plowshares your blocker with, like, a Snapcaster Mage at the end of your turn, all of a sudden you lose the Monarch title, and then you probably just lose the game. When it works out, sure, it's like a Planeswalker. It's that level of good. But when it fails, you just lose. And if you sit back and try to play the defensive game versus Miracles, and you just let them keep making their land drops while holding a couple of guys back in fear of a Snapcaster Mage, like, that doesn't seem like a good path to winning. So maybe Spark Mage should be Sword of War and Peace. So I don't run into the same issue with the check pile matchup because I have all of these Rest in Peace to board in, but that's not necessarily worth a card versus Miracles. I do love Sword of War and Peace. I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. If you're following my content, you've probably played Sword of War and Peace quite a bit yourself. Sword of War and Peace is going to be better than Cunning Spark Mage. Honestly, it probably is. Alright, I'm in for that change. it didn't take a lot of convincing. Yeah, so I think Rip is a fine main board card. I'm going to try a Mirran Crusader in the main deck this time around, just so that I have an extra creature that just sort of beats in, just kind of going off the Spirit of the Labyrinth conversation from a minute ago. I think I want one more guy that can just get in there and fight through stuff. And Mirran Crusader is really good at that. If I wanted to get kind of cutesy, I could try something like a Thalia Heretic Cathar in that slot to sort of play along with some of the mana denial elements of Magus of the Moon, but Thalia Heretic Cathar is not great when you're on the draw. It's awkward, and it's not good in the mirror when your opponent has a Caracas, and the situations where it's amazing, and the situations where it's just a 3-2 with first strike, one of those situations tends to come up more than the others. All right, chat, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to respond here. If you have any other ideas for things that you would like to see me use in this deck list or talk about, I'm happy to listen to them. Otherwise, I think I'm comfortable submitting this this for a league. All right, let's do it. All right, white, red, black, taxes. Let's do it. So in case any of you are new to this stream, welcome. My name's Phil Gallagher. I run Thraben University, and this channel is going to be pretty much entirely Death and Taxes all the time. It is my deck of choice, and I've been playing it for years and years and years at this point. There's still a lot to learn, though. I don't know to what extent you all can hear this, but my roommates are definitely playing Public Battlegrounds right now, and they're saying some pretty interesting things that I can hear through the walls. I don't know if you can hear that, but if you hear random outbursts of yelling or I'm not dead yet or equivalent, that's them. And we're apparently going to spend infinite time in the queue to get paired here. Whee! I guess while we do so, I'll leave this up. My kingdom for a match of Legacy. So at what point are you going to try out Daredevil for yourself, if at all? Chris Cunningham and Atai are both trying it out right now, and I'm going to let them be the guinea pigs on this one. I don't think that card is going to be of a consistent power level. I think it is going to have a high ceiling where, you're playing against Storm, they duress you, you get to duress them back with the Daredevil, or you're playing against some Miracles and they council judgment you, and you vial that thing in, and then you council judgment away their Jace. Like, there are going to be some really cool scenarios that happen. but I don't think on average the card is going to be good. Like, it has some problems. It's a 2-drop that you actually don't want to cast on turn 2. Like, getting the red early on in the game for if you wanted to, like, say, do a 1-drop on turn 3 can sometimes be a little bit tricky, and it does not play well with Thalia. Oh, finally! A match! Great. Playing against Pascal 3000, who is last seen on 4-color control. I have a hand that doesn't really do anything. Like, it has a Jitte and a Palace Jailer, but I have no gas, I have no Ether Vial, no Stoneforge, no Thalia. With most decks that my opponent is going to be on, this isn't necessarily a good hand. We're going to send this back and try to find something better. This hand is more reasonable. I don't really think I want a second Cavern. Like, the first one is pretty good. The second one has diminishing returns. Like, I might want a land, but I don't think I want a second Cavern. Especially when I have 3 different creature types in my hand and none of them are humans. Versus Pascal 3000. We are on the draw. What do I think of Path of Metal from Rivals of Ixalan? I need to look up that card. Alright, my opponent has a death right. We'll sort that. Alright, so Path of Metal says, it's a legendary enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature that doesn't have First Strike, Double Strike, Vigilance, or Haste. When you attack with at least 2 creatures that have those things, you transform it, and it turns into a land that taps for any color. For a colorless and a red, it can shock an opponent, and for 2 colorless and a white, it destroys a creature at random that attacked this turn. This sounds like a card that will probably board wipe us. So I don't like that card. So what did I cosplay as? This weekend I was Lupin the Third, the one with the red jacket from the show of the same name, Lupin the Third, and I was Tsukasa from Dot Hack Signs. I also brought along a Koenma cosplay from Yu Yu Hakusho, but by the time Sunday rolled around, I was pretty worn out, and I was really only planning on staying at the con for a couple of hours that morning, so I didn't cosplay on Sunday. I hope he cosplayed as Thalia. I'll keep that as a possibility for the future. My opponent evidently had a pretty tricky brainstorm. Just fetching Tundra and passing is interesting. I don't think I want to play this fetch yet. I don't know whether or not I want to use it for a plateau or a mountain yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw this on human. I know I don't have humans now, but Like long term, that's what this is going to want to be on. And we'll run the Stoneforge out there into this Swords to Plowshares. Oh wow, my opponent does not have counterspells. My opponent just F6'd, which makes me think they don't have Swords to Plowshares. So fetching Batterskull might not be bad. But I'm not going to be that risky. I'll just take the Sword of Fire and Ice, which is probably generically very good in this matchup. Oh no, my opponent really didn't have Swords to Plowshares. This feels like Bant Deathblade. Yeah, it is probably Bant Deathblade. I agree with that. My opponent was last seen on a 4-color control deck. I didn't actually click on the link. I wonder if we could build an aggro red-white taxes with Avengers, Crusaders, Thalia, and so forth. That Path to Metal does work. A brew. I mean, you could. Is that good? Like, is that better than what you could normally be doing? Alright, my opponent has their own Stoneforge. So my play is probably going to be play Windswept Heath, pass, intend on Swords to Plowshare and whatever they put this Jitte that they're going to fetch on, and then vial in my own equipment. Oh no, they got a Sword of Fire and Ice. That's interesting. What does that mean about my opponent's hand? Does that mean that they have the Jitte or Batterskull in their hand already? Or does that mean that they don't have a Jitte and they just have like Sword of Fire and Ice and Batterskull in their main deck? I find it surprising that they don't have Daze, Force of Will, or Swords to Plowshares. Yeah, me too. I agree with your assessment of the situation. So if they have a Batterskull in hand, I kind of want to remove this Stoneforge right now. But if they have like another land plus Jitte in hand already, then I don't want to remove this Stoneforge yet, and I want to wait as long as possible to cast this Swords to Plowshares. I'm just gonna play a land and pass, and we'll Swords to Plowshares something on my opponent's turn. My opponent's hand might just be full of equipment. So I don't want to proactively name Jitte with Revoker when I have a Swords to Plowshares in hand that I want to burn first. Like, I would love for them this turn to use all of their mana to, like, cast Jitte, equip Jitte, attack with Stoneforge, and then get blown out by the Swords to Plowshares, and I get, like, a time walk off the Swords to Plowshares. You know, I already think it's pretty unlikely that my opponent has counter magic in hand because they've F6'd through my turns. So if they have counter magic, they probably drew it this turn. I'm just gonna get like a Leovold here or something annoying like that. Yep, I'm gonna get a Leovold here. Okay. I am gonna want to remove this Leovold rather than doing like removing the Stoneforge in response because I have this Sword of Fire and Ice that I want to draw me cards, and if the Leovold is around, I can't do that. So the Leovold is fine. I kind of feel like my opponent has a Batterskull in hand. Like they've done so little this game that I think it's pretty likely that if I put this piece of equipment on this Stoneforge, I am just going to get ambushed by Batterskull. So I don't think I want to play into that, and I think I want to play kind of safe here. So we're going to play a Thalia, and then suit up the Thalia. Sure, but if I cast the Revoker and they have the Batterskull like I think they do, they still put in the Batterskull, and then what do? Go and name, like, Umezawa's Jitte? That doesn't seem great. Like, I don't know that they have that card in their deck for sure. I don't know that they have that card in their hand for sure. Alright. Well, that's kind of scary. Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez. Sad trumpet indeed. Well, if this was a post-sideboard game, and we could go and get that Orzhov Pontiff, that would feel really nice, chat. That would feel really nice indeed. Well, if my opponent is not an idiot, they should just win this game. So I think I probably have to revoke Sword of Fire and Ice. Because as of right now, I'm on a three turn clock from double True Names attacking in. But if that sword gets equipped, then it's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm on a 2-turn clock instead. How can I kill them in 3 turns? Because I'm dead in 3 turns regardless. So if I revoke Sword of Fire and Ice this turn, then next turn I can Flicker Wisp Stoneforge, and my following turn I can get Jitte and Thalia and gain 4 life. 4 life would put me at 21. I would need to be at 24 in order to not die to the true names. Or excuse me, 25. If I Flicker Wisp Stoneforge, get Batterskull, my opponent puts Sword of Fire and Ice on a true name, and then they eat my Flicker Wisps and my Stoneforges, and I won't be able to hardcast the Batterskull even if I draw a land because of Thalia. This is really anemic, but my line here is revoke this Sword of Fire and Ice and hope to maybe naturally draw Batterskull and land as my next 2 draws. This is rough. Yeah, with my opponent having this Noble Hierarch as a chump blocker, it's very unlikely that I can win this race. It's really good to know that my opponent has a Wasteland in their deck. At least one. That was just a Vendilion click check, in case you were wondering. Oh, wait a second. Mirror Crusader. Okay. So if I get in for 3 damage this turn and put my opponent to 20, Mirror Crusader attacking in is 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 damage, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 damage. Mirror Crusader gets us close. Mirror Crusader gets us really close. And playing Mirror Crusader would let us draw Swords to Plowshares to gain some life. Alright, well, I start by attacking in and see if they have anything. Oh, yeah, we are dead if they draw absolutely anything. That is 100% for sure. Like, I am hoping the card in their hand is exactly land. Alright, so let me make sure the Swords to Plowshares line actually works. So, assuming I get land and Swords to Plowshares both in the next turn, then I can equip Mirroring Crusader, attack in for a buttload of damage, and gain 4 life by plowing my Mirroring Crusader. That would put me up to 15. My opponent hits me down to 5 here. I would gain 4 going up to 9, and that does buy me a turn. Alright. I think that's better than any Flicker Wisp line. Alright, what if I wisp instead? That ends up similarly, right? So they hit me down to 5, and I can gain 4 if I draw the land to go to 9. The Crusader line puts more damage into play and allows me to draw cards after Sword of Fire and Ice triggers, whereas the Wisp line means that I have to draw a land for my turn. So I think I like the Crusader line better. And again, we are on the, if opponent has literal anything, we're dead. I assume that the card in my opponent's hand right now is just a dead card. Like, they didn't cast anything, and pretty much anything they had, they would have cast. This also may cause my opponent... Oh, no. Alright, Magus of the Moon, you are a little late to the party, friend. Oh, man, I messed up. I messed up, guys. None of you caught me. None of you caught me doing my stupid thing. Because guess what? I revoked Sword of Fire and Ice, so I can't move it. That's on me. That's bad, and that's on me. Alright, so if I had done the Flicker was for Stoneforge line, I didn't draw the land, so we were dead either way, but that's 100% on me for making an error. Alright, so we're playing against Bant, Deathblade, and we lost. Alright, so we'll board in this Sword of War and Peace. We'll board in this Orzhov Pontiff, which should be pretty sweet. We'll board in the Blessed Alliance to eat true names as well. And the Leon and Relic Order. Say the Cataclysm and the P and K are maybes. Alright. So what do I want to board out? Most of these cards are pretty good. I board out Palace Jailer versus True Name Nemesis decks. It's just not a great proposition to go and try to, like, Palace Jailer out your opponent who is on True Name. Like, that doesn't work. And my opponent is probably on, like, a 4 True Name deck as well. I can consider cutting some number of the Swords to Plowshares. They're not amazing in this matchup, but they can be very good. The issue is that if I go and cut all of them, then I don't take the Mana Dorks off the board, and Magus of the Moon goes and just absolutely stomps on their mana base. So I might actually go on the plan of, like, trim my Thalias, which sounds blasphemous, but could be fine. Like, I guess Crusader isn't particularly good against a True Name deck, so I'll cut one of those. I'll shave a Thalia, and I'll shave a Swords to Plowshares. Do you generally board out an equipment when you bring in Sword of War and Peace? No. Like, equipment is pretty great in this matchup. Like, it's the stuff that takes over games. If you get ahead with Jitte, it's really good. Like, let me make my mulligan decision and then I'll talk more. I'll keep this hand. It's very reasonable. So, like, if you get ahead on board and your opponent has, like, a bunch of, like, Mana Dorks and Stoneforge Mystics and stuff of that nature in their hand, then going and playing the Jitte tears apart their board. Like, on their true name based draws, the Jite isn't great, but on their regular draws, it's quite powerful. My opponent F6 through my turn there, so they don't have any counter magic. If I draw a different land other than this fetch next turn, I will probably hold the fetch because my opponent has Deathrite Shaman, but now that they're going to wasteland me, that's kind of irrelevant. Alright, my opponent gets to Thoughtseize me, and they probably take my Stoneforge Mystic here. Which means in all likelihood I will be porting my opponent on their turn. Did I board out my P and K? If I didn't board out my P and K, that would have been a reasonable card to board out. I did not board out my main deck P and K. If my opponent has Wastelands, then boarding out the P and K might be fine. Like, since the Deathblade deck is a control type deck, sort of at its heart, P and K is the sort of card that is good against them, but maybe in actuality it's not the absolute best thing that I could be doing. I'd like to put more pressure on my opponent. If I don't port them, they might true name me, which would be a little bit annoying. But if I just keep 2 pressure on my opponent, I don't actually do anything this turn, and if they play another land, they can true name anyway. Getting this Vial down is important. But I think my tempo probably matters more. I'm going to press the life total advantage that I have here. And I'm going to fetch basic planes on the off chance that, like, we draw a Cavern of Souls. Then we will still have a basic for a Magus of the Moon. And just before it happens, just to call the shot, a Zealous Persecution would be pretty terrible for us. Like, with this Thalia and these Flicker Wisps and the potential of me having to, like, tap out for another Flicker Wisp again next turn, That would be real bad. Alright, there's the true name. So it was good that we did not port our opponent. It would not have accomplished anything. Ugh. Draws are rough this game. We're supposed to draw the vials at the beginning. So we sort of have two options for how we want to race our opponent. We can try to put a Jitte on this Flicker Wisp, or we can get cute with Flicker Wisps. And again, I think it's get cute with Flicker Wisp time. So we'll Flicker Wisp our Flicker Wisp. Go to end step. And we'll Flicker out their Scrubland. This is, you know, just to kind of limit their mana availability with this Thalia here and the amount of pressure that we have in play. If we can just kind of keep them from doing something like Jitte and equip on True Name over the next turn or two, we'd probably win this game. Alright, chat, I called it. There's the Zealous Persecution that wrecked us. These draws. These draws. What are you waiting on, opponent? You have a True Name and a Death Right, and I have nothing. What's the decision where you need to wait at my end step? Is it just going to happen here? Is it just going to be Jitte and equip here, and I can concede and go on my merry way? Or do... No. We get to play out this matchup for a couple more minutes still. Alright, that should pretty much do it. Like, I'm effectively at 8 life because my opponent is probably going to drain me. Oh, no, my opponent went for mana for some reason. Oh, is it just another True Name? Just another True Name? No, a Leovold. Well, I get to bounce that, so I guess that's good. Alright. That's fine. We're dead. Very, very little we could have done in that one, you know. Drawing Vile mid-game, and the third Caracas was pretty rough. This is not a matchup that I like, generally speaking, anyway. Alright, so we're on the draw, and we lost there. And we lost game 2 to Zealous Persecution and True Name Nemesis. So for anyone who joined the stream a touch late, I'm just going to show you our deck list real quick that we're working with after I go ahead and join the queue, because our last match took like 3 or 4 minutes to get paired. We are playing red, white, black taxes today, with the black in the sideboard being for Orzhov Pontiff. We're trying out a couple of new things here. We're going to try a Blessed Alliance in the sideboard as an answer to True Name Nemesis, because as we saw that game, that card is really, really good against us, and it's pretty annoying. Alright. We get to try again. Against Punishing Waterfalls. I wonder if they will actually be playing Punishing Waterfalls. My guess is probably not. Looks like Punishing Waterfalls was last seen playing Miracles in August of 2013, so they could be on basically anything. Well, this hand's awkward. I can't cast this P and K. I have a second Caracas, but I have Thalia and 2 Wastelands. If my opponent's on like a Deathrite Shaman deck, this is not great. If my opponent's on Miracles, an awkward hand. I should probably mulligan this for a more reasonable hand. I'm gonna ship this one. Oh, neat, you watched my matchup from the other side. Yeah, it was not the most exciting match. Alright, so my opponent is probably on Dredge here. Yep, they're on Dredge. So the first hand of Thalia's and Wastes is a little sketchy against Dredge. Not that this hand is particularly better. Alright, what did my opponent dump in there? So there's a Troll and an Imp. So they've got plenty of Dredgers. And there's an Icarid in there and a Cabal Therapy. I can Wasteland my opponent, but that 1 mana isn't really doing anything right now. And likely won't ever. So I'm just going to play Mom and kind of hope that things come together on this one. Like, Mom gives us a chump blocker that can trade with an Icarid. Not that my opponent would let me trade, but it's a possibility. Alright, my opponent now has 1 bridge in their graveyard as well as the Cabal Therapy. So this should probably name Thalia Guardian of Thraben here. I probably don't have a Swords to Plowshare since I didn't hold it up. Yeah, alright, they correctly named Thalia Guardian of Thraben. They have a second Cabal Therapy, so that one is going to get both of my Flicker Wisps. No, they did not opt to do that. Yeah, we're just gonna play a port and pass and port them, even though that's not gonna matter. Unfortunately, this isn't City of Brass, so my opponent does not take 1 damage. So my opponent has 1 Stinkweed Imp left here. If they whiff here, I'll be happy. Let's see. Alright, they have a Golgari Thug left as a Dredger. And they put a 2nd bridge in the graveyard. So this gets both Flicker Wisps, and I'm sad. Yep. Do I want to play the Magus of the Moon? Probably not. Like, the Magus doesn't really do anything meaningful on their side of the battlefield, and I'm still kind of just hoping that my opponent whiffs on everything. Yep. I need to get, like, a Thalia ASAP. That is probably about my only route back into this game. Is get a Thalia, make them not be able to cast any more spells, and see if that's good enough, which it probably isn't. Ugh. So, my opponent had an LED, which let them discard their hand so that they could continue to dredge just when they ran out of dredgers. Super, super inconvenient. I now should not be able to beat their board. Yep. And my opponent has figured this out. So I'll block an Icarid, the Icarid will die, I'll get rid of the bridges, but I'm going to take so much damage that it's moot. Alright. So I take, if I play a Magus, I take 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, dead. Alright. That was rough. Alright, so we're playing against Dredge. These paths are great. Containment Priest. Great. Rest in peace. Pretty darn solid. Canonist has some amount of utility. That will probably end up coming in. Pontiff can get rid of some of their little stuff. But it probably doesn't do enough to matter. We're going to get rid of these 4-drops and these Magus of the Moons. They're going to probably do literally nothing in this matchup. They're just far, far too slow to matter. After that, what are we going to do? Our Revokers can name Lion's Eye Diamonds, so they're not dead. They're not particularly great either. Sword of Fire and Ice isn't doing a ton. And then I need 3 more cuts, or maybe not, to bring in the Canonists. The Flicker Wisps aren't amazing. Like, there's nothing my opponent has that I want to actually flicker. And I could probably trim 1 Stoneforge Mystic. I could also consider trimming a land in this matchup. Like, it's a matchup that's often decided by, like, a 2-drop card. So, like, I slam a Rest in Peace, or a Thalia, or a Containment Priest, and that just ends the game. And because of that, I could go down a land. But if I go down a land, I'm just going to be doing something like keeping a Stoneforge. So that's not necessarily the best. This is fine. So this is a hand that does not have graveyard hate, but this hand is pretty insane nevertheless. Like, I can curve Thalia into Wingmare to prevent my opponent from casting anything, and I also have Recruiter of the Guard to go and get Containment Priest. So this is a hand that is good enough that I will keep it even though it does not have graveyard hate. Like, if my opponent has the nuts and just goes off on turn 1, so be it, but otherwise, I'm in pretty good shape. And they're probably priced into naming Rest in Peace here, as that's the card that they probably can't beat. Oh, nope, they named Thalia. That's fine. That is a fair name as well. Let's see, do I have any red cards left in my deck? No, I don't. Oh man, my opponent's hand is not good. They probably should have just flashbacked that Cabal Therapy there. Like, named either my Wingmare or my Recruiter of the Guard. That seems like a mistake. Maybe not. They might be playing around me, like, having Recruiter of the Guard for Containment Priest. So I'm going to plan on not deploying this Recruiter right away. And just getting Containment Priest in my hand, because it might get Cabal Therapied away. Instead, I'll play out this Wingmare first. And then I might put the pressure on my opponent's mana next turn with Rishadan Port before Recruitering of the Guard and Containment Priesting in the same turn. Oh, okay, so I didn't really think of this. I guess Golgari Thug puts itself back on top of the library, so using it to get itself in the graveyard doesn't work. Alright, that's neat. I haven't seen, like, Golgari Thug's die ability ever matter. My opponent gets rid of the Flicker Wisp and not the Recruiter of the Guard. Interesting. Do they have another piece of follow-up discard? So I'm going to hold up this Path to Exile, and if my opponent does something that matters, I will path it. Like if my opponent goes and casts a Cabal Therapy, I will path it. How do I feel about this matchup? Fine, but not great. I like it better when I'm playing Surgicals in my deck. So I don't need to path this card right now. I 100% do not need to path it. I'm going to do so for mana efficiency. Yeah, I'm a little unsure why my opponent didn't mulligan their hand. Like, it's possible they have something stupid like Firestorm, and this Containment Priest is just going to eat it right away. But I will play it out anyway. Like, I would really... Neat. I'm going to tap the Mine over the Confluences, because my opponent's life total matters a ton at this point. They're at 6. I always try to win before the hate comes down on the Dredge side. Yes, that is 100% correct in my opinion. I am scared of my opponent doing something that I can't handle on turn 1. Like, if you look at my 2-drop slot for this matchup, I have 16 2-drops, and of those, like, discounting the Stoneforges and the Jitte, like, 12 of those plays are very, very strong turn 2 plays. So, like, it matters quite a bit whether or not my opponent can just go out on their turn 1 or their turn 2 before I get down the stuff that matters. All right. So game 2, win with mana denial. And it was really because the opponent had a weak hand. They might have been missing something that, like, one more card of the right nature would have let them just immediately go off, and that's why they kept their hand. But from my side of the board, it looked like a pretty weak keep. What do you name with the Revokers in this matchup? Lion's Eye Diamond. Like, a lot of times if your opponent has Lion's Eye Diamond, they just use it on turn 1 and go ham. But if they don't, and you get to name Lion's Eye Diamond and actually stop them from doing that, it can be a game-winning play. Like, there are some scenarios where your opponent goes and is just trying to, like, sandbag the Lion's Eye Diamond for a turn, so you don't know that they're about to go ham. It's not like Revoker's great, but it's fine. This game will probably mulligan pretty aggressively for a Rest in Peace. I could just have that in my opener. That'd be absolutely great. This is a really reasonable 7-card hand. But is this a hand that wins me the game? The answer is probably no. Like, if I do something like Path and Narcomoeba or an Icarid on their turn and follow up with Canonist or Stoneforge, both of those things are probably not good enough. I'd much rather keep an opener that has a Rest in Peace or a Thalia. And I am punished with this pile. So I have no interaction with my opponent before turn 3 as of right now, other than this Wasteland. That probably doesn't cut it. I'll shift this one. Keep. This hand is gas. I'll put the Revoker on the bottom. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Scary. Don't be Breakthrough. Please don't be Breakthrough. Looks like Breakthrough. It's Breakthrough. Yep. Oh, chat. Oh, chat, look. My opponent has a lone Golgari Thug in their graveyard. Will things work out for us? We'll find out. Please work out for us. Whiff. All right. Well, chat. There's a chance. There's a very real chance that we win this game. We're swordsing the shit out of this Icarid. Oh wait, my opponent probably can't even put this Icarid into play because if they do so, they get rid of their Golgari Thug. That's freaking hilarious. Yeah. Oh, this is grand. Hold on, let me just tap 2 mana here and oh god. Oh, it feels so good. My opponent also milled one of their Wear Tears, so they're on very few outs to this Rest in Peace. This is glorious. So now I play this Thalia, and I can port them off mana for the rest of the game, so that if they draw something that matters, they can't actually cast it. Super rewarded for my mulligan decisions this game. Yep, and our opponent scoops it up. Yeah, wear tear isn't actually an out at this point. Like if they wear tear the rest in peace, they get it out of play so they can start to do things. But then they need something like a breakthrough to get dredgers back into the graveyard as well, and it's going to be like very difficult to do in addition to all the disruption that I'm going to have after that point. All right, so then game 3, we got rip after opponent whiffs on breakthrough. We got a touch lucky that time. Oh no, I combined those 2 columns in my spreadsheet. All right, so we were playing against Dredge. We were on the draw and we lost. We were on the play and we won. Then we were on the play, or no, then we were on the draw and we won. All right. Who did we play against? We played against Punishing Waterfalls. Alright. Sorry about that. I set up a new portion of my spreadsheet for this new version of the deck. Fortune favors the bold. I agree. And I don't think the mulligan was wrong. Like, against Dredge, you just need to have a really good turn 2 play in order to keep your hand. And I'm very willing to go to 4 or 5 in this matchup in order to do that. And I've certainly even mulliganed to like 3 before in this matchup, because that's how important one card can be. Pascal 3000 was playing Deathblade. We got stomped by a zealous persecution. It was absolutely savage. Alright, so thank you all for joining me. My name's Phil Gallagher of Thraben University, and we are playing 3-color taxes tonight. I'm going to leave the deck list up here for about 30 seconds while I run to the restroom before our next match. We are currently 1-1. Alright, chat. Let's get to it. 1-1 in this league so far with our 3-color taxes deck. Black again is just for that Orzhov Pontiff. And we will have to decide whether or not Pontiff is bros. Whether or not he is worth adjusting the mana base for. Not 100% sure it is, but I don't hate the idea of having some outs to True Name Nemesis, you know. Like I mentioned in passing in my article, it's a card that I have 0 outs to with the red deck. So while we're waiting, other things I'm starting to think about. Now that I'm affiliate, I can do that whole subscription thing, which means that I also need some like subscription perks. And so I'm going to need some emotes. So if you have any ideas for emotes, I would love to hear those. Like, I theoretically need 3, and it seems like a Thalia one of some nature is pretty easy and necessary, but I don't really have ideas for the other 2. It has been casually suggested to me that a Wirewood symbiote giving me the middle finger would be really good, but I don't know if we can get that rendered properly in such a small icon. So as far as changes I made to the deck list from what I'm playing before, I'm trying a Mirran Crusader in the main deck over the main deck Rest in Peace that I had previously. I've gone up a Cavern of Souls and down a Rashadan Port to make casting this Orzhov Pontiff possible. I'm trying a Blessed Alliance over the third Path to Exile, and I'm trying Sword of War and Peace over Cunning Spark Mage. What's your best GP finish with taxes, out of curiosity? 30 something? Without looking, I day 2'd and did very well. It was definitely top 64. Might have been top 32. I don't remember exactly. Would have been Louisville, I think. I think I've day 2'd all of the Legacy GPs that I've played. And I think I've been in prize contention for all of them until the last round. A Dread of Night emote? That's the same level of savage that I was thinking of. You're playing against Synapse Twitch. Who was last seen on Death and Taxes, but months and months and months and months ago. Either way, I can't keep this hand. Well, this is a bad hand, but I'm keeping it. This hand's super awkward. Like, ugh. If my opponent actually is on D&T, then this Revoker's pretty good. It's a card that I can cast off double colorless, so I'm tempted to keep it, but I really just want lands. I'll put it on top. My opponent goes and instead leads on something like Deathrite Shaman, and I get to resolve that. That's fine. But this was a rough mulligan for sure. Like, there are so many things wrong with this hand. Alright, so we're on the draw versus Synapse Twitch. Oh god, is it worse? Is it just elves? Ugh. Well, the good news is we get to revoke that Deathrite Shaman. The bad news is our opponent is probably playing elves. We're dead. Super dead. Forest Deathrite is not good. Deathrite Shaman is also not necessarily the card you want to revoke against elves. Like, there are so many better targets, but I don't know for sure that the opponent is elves yet. And for me to have any chance at winning this matchup, I need them to not be elves. So I'm going to kind of hope that this Revoker cuts him off mana. Whew! Whew! Oh, chat. We dodged a bullet. It is not elves. I'm going to tell my opponent that I'm happy. Yes, I won the match versus Dredge. I mulliganed to 5 and ended up winning with a Rest in Peace. My opponent bricked pretty hard. Oh my god. Great draw. Great draw. I'm going to start by offering my opponent the trade for this Revoker. I just want to push damage. And if my opponent wants to block and make me tap this Mother of Runes, it's abysmal. Yeah, sorry to finish my thought there. I won the dredge matchup with a mulligan. My opponent bricked really, really hard on a breakthrough. They only put one dredger in the graveyard, and that gave me the opportunity to just kind of clean house. So on the previous turn, my opponent did not shuffle with the Ponder. They have the opportunity to do so now, meaning they got 2 of the 3 cards from that Ponder. But I might be cutting them off something. It's sort of weird that my opponent has no play whatsoever. My opponent might block now in order to make me use the mob. So that they can go and abrupt decay something. But since I have a follow-up mob, I'm 100% okay with this situation. I could have gotten cute and wastelanded the Verdant Catacombs there, because my opponent probably wanted whatever card was on top of their library if they left it there with Ponder. But I'm so resource light, and I don't think I need to get that cute. It's also possible that my opponent is just out of basics, and if they fetch with this Verdant, I get to snipe it. Alright, my opponent is pretty basic heavy. Maybe on something like a Lurin for food chain. Alright, there's a Shardless Agent. Alright, there's an Abrupt Decay. That's pretty good. Yep. Alright, Caracas buddy, you're a turn late. So I have a choice here about whether or not I want to wasteland my opponent. If I don't wasteland them and I draw a red source, I can cast P and K the next turn, which will probably be really, really good against their deck. But if they're on something like Lurin and they go and cast that Lurin, it's probably bad news bears for me. So I'm just going to eat their Bayou. Like, my opponent might still go, like, land Lurin. Yep. Alright. So with that on the stack, I can Flicker Wisp out their Allurin. Flicker Wisp my other Flicker Wisp. And Flicker Wisp my Revoker. Alright. This is 3 or less, 3 or less. Alright. I'll cast a Flicker Wisp. Alright, you will Glint Nest Crane in response, will you? Do I want to Flicker Wisp again in response? I kind of want to Flicker Wisp again in response. So then my first Flicker Wisp can blink out my Revoker. My second Flicker Wisp can blink out the Allurin. Or vice versa. Yeah. At Pun 1000, they would have floated the mana, and then they still could have played for Thalia. So no, there was no merit in that line. Flickering the Agent doesn't actually do anything. So Flicker Wisp 1 will flicker out the Revoker, so that way when Flicker Wisp 2 resolves, yeah, this is a mess. No, I'll get a learn with this first one. Glint Nest Crane, or Bird Dad as some people call him, is sort of a neat card, but it's a card that can whiff a lot. Like it can hit the Shardless Agents, like we see here, or it can hit the Parasitic Strix. So I'll flicker my Revoker, and we're going to try to see if we can stack this right, so that I return the Revoker before I return the Allurin and get to revoke their Cavern Harpy. Alright, so which one do I want to put on the stack first? So I want to put the one that returns Allurin on the stack first, and the one that returns Revoker on top of it. At Mr. Meow, that does not work that way. So, Mother of Runes gives one of your creatures protection, not one of, not any creature. Okay, Swords to Plowshares is pretty sweet. That is going to do things. So my opponent can still cast a bunch of stuff with Allurin, but they can't actually bounce things with Cavern Harpy, which is really good. My opponent is going to get to cast a bunch of things off this Allurin, and I don't entirely know what is going to happen. I'm going to start in by just attacking in with 2 Flicker Wisps. Like, under no circumstances am I going to go and attack with this Phyrexian Revoker, because my opponent has a Shardless Agent in their hand, and that's a really bad proposition for me. The good thing is that if my opponent has something that matters, I can cast this Swords to Plowshares. but otherwise I might just not cast this and try to kill them. Like if I cast this and I remove either the Cavern Harpy or the Glint Nest Crane, then I don't necessarily kill them with a double Flicker Wisp attack. Yeah, I also did not expect my opponent to just take that. I expected a Glint Nest Crane, Glint Nest Crane chump block. Ah, alright. My opponent's getting spicy. Boros fist bump to you. Today's storm count 1. Oh, Starstreak. Jeff, thank you very much for subscribing. You are my first subscriber. Thank you very much. I will get you an emote sometime soon. It is on my immediate to-do list. I have the option to double attack in with Flicker Wisps and give them pro blue, and then my opponent's only out to that is having an Abrupt Decay. But since they have Abrupt Decay mana up, I don't think I want to do that. Oh, thank you, Yes by Games, for subscribing. Now I have 2 subscribers, and now I have double the reasons to get some emotes up in here. So for similar reasons, I also can't tap both of these Mother of Runes, because if I tap both of these Mother of Runes and my opponent has Abrupt Decay, I probably just die. So let's attack in with 2 Flicker Wisps and see what my opponent does. My guess is I will see 2 blocks. About to gain life with Deathrite Shaman. Yeah, that's true. I probably messed up this turn. So I'll protect this one from black. Yeah, I messed up this turn. And I'll Swords to Plowshares this Baleful Strix so it doesn't go to the graveyard. But if I was gonna, like, remove something with the Swords to Plowshares, I should have just removed the Baleful Strix prior to blocks to have the potential to push 3 damage here. Like, I let my opponent effectively gain 3 life for free. That was bad. I could have also just, like, gone for the kill, because with my... Oh, Force of Will. Now do I tap this Mother of Runes? And if my opponent has the Abrupt Decay, give them a chance to go off. They only get a couple of rebuys with Cavern Harpy. Seems really bad to tap low now. But I threaten to have them dead on the following turn. Yeah, I think now that I've messed up this turn so much, I want to protect and give myself the chance to kill them next turn. What is this? Whenever this thing or another ally enters the battlefield, you drain one? Okay. Well, the good news is my opponent did not have the Abrupt Decay. The bad news is that meant that I could have just killed them if I went for it. So, while we're waiting, story time for the chat. I started playing in. Alright, so my opponent is going to try to aggro me out. And I accept their attempts to do so. Upkeep Leovold me. Okay. Alright, well I have the option to instant speed Magus of the Moon if that does anything. So I need to protect this Revoker from blue and then swing in with everything, and I think that should do it. Puts my if my opponent has another creature, they go up to 9 life, which is awkward. But let's see what happens. Like I feel like my opponent has to have something else because of the attack they made. Ooh, there's a Parasitic Strix. So if I have 2 blockers, I take 2, 3, Deathrite can drain. So if I block Leovold and a 2/2, I take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, dead. Yep. That's unfortunate. Alright. That loss was maybe avoidable. It was very, very close. Alright, so let's see what we do for sideboarding here. This Pontiff at instant speed might do some things. Like, it gets rid of the Baleful Strixes, it gets rid of the Cavern Harpies, and a couple other of the random utility guys that they might have. So these can come in. Canonist is absolutely amazing in this matchup. Palace Jailer and P&K, those can come out. While P&K's utility is very, very good, it's like the ability to shoot opposing creatures definitely matters, and the reach is nice. It's a 4-drop against a deck that is trying to combo off before turn 4, so that's probably not where we want to be. And we can get this Relic Warder in here to get rid of Alurin. And from here, we have some choices. Magus isn't particularly good either. Like, as you saw that game, our opponent had, like, turn 1, 2, and 3 basic lands. Some of those without fetching. So Magus's utility is limited. And then beyond that, I have to decide what I want to do. The red-white version has more bad cards for this matchup. Like, I could Cataclysm them, I guess, but it's awkward. I can Rest in Peace them. That's good against Deathrite, but not much of the rest of their deck. Ugh. Yeah, this is not ideal. Maybe I have to keep the P&Ks just because, like, they do something. Like, the single target removal is not good against their deck. In the post-sideboard games, they're going to play more of a grindy game plan against us. So, like, maybe I just have to keep the red cards. I'll keep the red cards for this game when I'm on the play. Like, if I keep the Magus, there's the possibility that it might keep them off of green-green specifically to cast Alurin. This sounds great. Let's see. Pontiff in the board now with just Cavern and Vials. How has that felt so far? Or too early to tell? This is my third match with it, so I can't give you any data on it from this time around. But from the previous times I've played it, and from the way the math works out, you have I think it's like 66% chance to be able to either play it on turn 3 or 4 or Violet in on turn 4. I've got a math article about that. Let's see. And then someone says, this is a pretty bad matchup, IMO. I agree. I'd be tempted to keep Magus in just because cheesing them off Alurin is necessary. Alright, yeah, you came to the same conclusion that I did. And before we do anything else, we're gonna just jam Aethersworn Canonist. Like, my opponent will probably just do something value-oriented next turn, like Shardless Agent. But I probably just want this Canonist in play as soon as possible. Although I could get aggressive with the Stoneforge. Yeah, I guess I'm not particularly worried about the Alurin if I have both Aethersworn Canonist and Leonin Relic Warder in hand for if my opponent does Alurin. So there might be an argument for just jamming the Stoneforge. I'll jam the Stoneforge and I'll see if it eats a removal spell. And I'm actually going to get the Batterskull to incentivize my opponent to get it off the board. Even though, you know, a very superior card in this matchup is the Jitte, I already have Sword of Fire and Ice as, like, removal for creatures. When did I start streaming? 2 weeks ago-ish. I've been playing the red-white build off and on since mid-December. I got home from Christmas break, visiting family in Illinois around, like, the turn of the year, and then about a week later I was streaming. Or maybe not even a week. A few days later I was streaming. Alright, my opponent gets Shardless Agent into Cavern Harpy. So they have to return their Cavern Harpy. Alright. So I don't really want my opponent to tap out for Alurin. Sure, we got that sub button quick. Yeah, that only took a couple of days. I streamed a lot. And given how much I've got going on, I am actually going to wasteland my opponent in the face of a Deathrite into the face of this Deathrite Shaman, even though that's not like the best use of my time, effort, or energy. Like my hand is really good right now, and what I'm doing is probably better than what my opponent can do on similar amounts of resources. Like, over the next 2 turns now, I can put in this Batter Skull, and if I draw a land, put Sword of Fire and Ice on and equip it. I will take the 2 damage from that. Oh man, Recruiter of the Guard is a great draw too. Like, if my opponent puts in Alurin, I can go ham too. So the first week I streamed, I probably streamed like 6 different times or something pretty absurd like that. All the videos are up on YouTube now. If you're looking for extra things to go and do, some of those videos were really good. There were a couple of them where we went and played through a bunch of weird matchups. I've seen Nicol Bolas Godpharaoh, for example, on the other side of the table. Is my opponent gonna like Thoughtseize me or something? Well, I'll take the value. I would really like to draw a land so that I can ping the Deathrite this turn. I did not. That's okay. I'm going to fetch a second Plateau here, because I have P and K in hand. I can get cute and Relic Order this Baleful Strix and bash in for 7, but I don't want to get that cute. I can take a turn off from attacking and just plan on winning the Resource War. Forgot about Canonist and tried to cast another spell. That happens a lot. It happened to me the first time I played with Canonist on Magic Online, because it just doesn't let you cast it, but it doesn't tell you why you can't cast it, so I kind of sat there and derped around for longer than I care to admit, trying to figure out why I couldn't cast a spell. I thought it was a Moto bug at first, and then I looked at my own board and was very, very embarrassed. So we're down to 1 land in the graveyard. Abrupt Decay on the Canonist. You got it, boss. Do you have a land? Oh man, you don't have a land. That should pretty much do it then. Do I just give him the Magus? Do I just wait and give him the Magus, or do I kill his Deathrite Shaman first? I would give them 1 turn to cast an Abrupt Decay with a Deathrite Shaman, but it couldn't really hit anything that particularly matters. I'm gonna get rid of the Deathrite Shaman first. It's really close, though. Like, both of these are mana-denying plays, so I'm going to opt towards taking the one that clocks my opponent. Like, I don't particularly want my opponent to Abrupt Decay this sword. That would set me back a little bit and turn this Baleful Strix into a relevant card instead of a dead card. Whew. All right, we're not losing this game now. Yeah, we're still not losing this game. That's fine. Since my opponent is dead either way, I'm going to take their Baleful Strix off the table. So, someone was talking about having a land in the graveyard to, like, potentially kill the Magus, but I had Mother of Runes, so if I just jam the Magus, it's not dying. Like, it's definitely sticking around. In addition, not playing the Magus there and just going for the Deathrite Shaman kill is probably better, because if my opponent fetches, they might not be able to play around Wasteland. They might just be priced into going and, like, fetching a non-basic because they need colors. Like, they only have basic Swamp. This hand is reasonable. It's not great, but it's probably not worth mulliganing. My opponent did take a mulligan. Alright, there's that Dreadnought. Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy, we get to go on the mana denial plan here. So my opponent gets 1 use out of this Deathrite Shaman as of right now. I can opt to either Thalia or Revoker. Both are going to be really, really strong. I'm actually going to lead on Thalia since I... Oh, no, I'm not going to lead on Thalia. Dread of Night. I'm going to lead on Revoker. And we probably just gimp our opponent here. Yeah. Sometimes I start talking for the sake of keeping, you know, entertainment going in the chat, and I don't really think about what I'm saying until I go and look at the board. And then I realize how bad some of the things I'm saying are. I'm going to cast this sword here to give my opponent the fewest opportunities to draw an Abrupt Decay and get this Deathrite Shaman active again. Or excuse me, like, draw a basic land to, like, Abrupt Decay this Revoker and get their Deathrite Shaman active again. I just want to equip this sword and either make him chump block with the Deathrite or kill the Deathrite. Lurin plays 20 lands, just like we did when we were kids. 20 lands and crawl worms. Alright, well, my opponent is just letting me kill their Deathrite and draw a card instead of chump blocking. I won't say no to that. Well, my opponent says, oops. Alright, my opponent plays Tablet of the Guilds. It's a card that will gain them some life. But this Revoker is going to clock them very, very quickly. I can double port my opponent, or I can just Magus. If I Magus and they don't have something else, they die. But it shuts off my ports, which is awkward. I don't have a lot of time to think. I'm low on clock. I'll jam the Magus. Double port is probably better. But this shuts off my opponent being able to fetch for anything. So it might seem weird that I'm attacking with the Magus, but I'm doing it so I can use Glintless Crane or use this trigger to kill the Glintless Crane so it can't block again next turn. Would have been more correct to leave up port in case of drawing a land. I know you're rushing because of time. It's a question of whether I want to leave out the possibility of drawing a mom or drawing another land to port. And again, yeah, I am rushing because of time. Like in a situation where I wasn't worried about the number of clicks that I was making, I would absolutely double port my opponent this game. But because I had I was sub 4 minutes on the clock, I didn't want to use the 15 seconds to go and double port my opponent, so I just did the Magus. The stream seems fairly choppy to me. Any idea if it's the internet or computer issue? I wouldn't be surprised if my camera is a little bit choppy. It's not the highest quality thing around, but if the stream itself is choppy, that's probably on Twitch's end rather than my end. If it's considerably worse than normal, let me know. It's my roomies playing PUBG. That's not unreasonable. We have decent internet here, but if I'm streaming and we have 3 people in the other room is playing PUBG, that is not insignificant. So what did we really win with that game 3? We really won with a Revoker on Deathrite Shaman, if I'm being completely honest. There were other cards that mattered, but that's really what did it. Alright, so we're currently 2-1 in this league with the 3-color taxes build that I'm looking at here. We lost to Deathblade in round 1, and then we beat Dredge and Allurin. We're not playing against the most representative decks in the format right now, but that's fine. That's a good portion of what Legacy is about. You get to play a whole bunch of weird stuff. Fun stuff. So someone in chat says, this guy keeps a lot of one-landers. I agree. Part of the reason to play Deathrite Shaman is it turns a lot of your one-land hands into very, very safe hands. Because, you get to go land Deathrite Shaman, usually followed by, Cantrip, and then play some 2-mana thing with Deathrite Shaman. So, between your Cantrips and your Deathrites, you have a pretty good shot at being just safe, mana-wise. But since I had Revoker in both of my hands, and as well as follow-up plays like Thalia, my opponent got super punished for their keeps. If my opponent had hit one more land on any of those draws, things might have gone a little bit better for them. Alright, we got paired for the next one already. Oop, other window. I am playing against JJKBB 2005. Oh, chat. Oh, chat. This is so sad. He's an Elves player. So, if my opponent is on Elves, this hand isn't good enough. But if for some reason my opponent is not on Elves, this is a very reasonable hand. And against Elves, it's not like there's any super hand that I can mulligan into. So, I'm going to keep this one and hope my opponent isn't playing Elves. Although my opponent's 10 or 12 finishes with Elves leads me to believe that they probably are on Elves. Yeah, rip. We're dead. If my opponent is actually on Elves, I can't beat them. That's fine. It's the Windswept Heathmere. It's happening! I mean, it's not so bad that we're going to concede. We have outs. Like, my opponent might play a lot of non-basic lands, and I can Blood Moon them. Or my opponent could just accidentally hit the concede button. Hey, you might be able to equip a Batter Skull to Mirran Crusader on turn 6. That is a line that does things, yeah. That's something I could do. Yes. My opponent can still lose this. There are still plenty of ways to lose. Ooh, we're on the hope a meteor lands on my opponent's computer line. That's strong. Ooh, disconnect or Windows updates. Those are good outs. That's a real chance of winning for us. Well, my opponent currently has the Wirewood Symbiote Elvish Visionary combo. So they've got that going for them. Other outs we have include my opponent taking a really long bathroom break and timing out. I don't think anyone covered that one yet. So this build doesn't have a prelate, unfortunately, so we can't just like Recruiter for prelate and shut off Natural Order. Not that that would matter anyway, because if my opponent can Natural Order, they'll just Natural Order anyway. MTGO could lock out the league and refund the entry. Another possible out. Alright, my opponent is taking forever for some reason. They get like another 30 seconds before I just type, "Please kill me," in the chat. Alright, so playing Pontiff TNT against Elves. We were on the draw? No, we were on the play. Playing against JJKBB 2005. And I'm not going to go quite so far as to put loss in this column yet, but I'm going to hover there. Kill me. Opponent is playing on a dial-up connection. Need time to redial and connect. Savage. Just start typing IYT out. What is IYT? Is that a typo or is that a thing? I've already typed "kill me" in the chat. I don't know what else they're waiting for there. Oh, it out. Oh, start typing "loss" out. Yeah, okay, that's fair. I don't know. We're ahead on clock by 3 minutes now. The timeout possibility is real. Maybe my opponent is calling in some reinforcements from Rivendell. That's a possibility of what's happening right now. Opponent is celebrating the free win with his buddies. Dick around for like 18 minutes and then use the last 2 minutes to cast Natural Orders twice. Yeah, that's fair. So like, playing against Elves is the worst, but playing against an Elves opponent who goes AFK is worse because you... Oh, my opponent has officially lost connection to the game. Chat, there's hope. glimmer, a ray of hope. But honestly, my opponent could disconnect for like 10 more minutes and still probably get me. The meteor line is still alive. I agree. We have an out to this board. It's an unconventional one. So I guess I need to like tell a story or something while we wait for my opponent to reconnect. Praise window update. Praise be. Praise be. So I'll tell you the story about how I met my good friend Starstreak87 there. So when I first started playing Magic, I just played in my senior year of college with my buddy's intro decks, which were from like frickin' Cold Snap or something like that. They were old. And Starstreak figured out that I was learning to play, and he worked at a local game store at the time. So I get my opponent is back. They only lost a few minutes. So one day, Starstreak goes and calls me up and says, "Hey Phil, I know you're just getting into Magic. Do you want a Magic collection?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm a broke college kid. I don't have really money." And he says like, "Yeah, but this is the stuff we don't really want, so $40 and it's yours." So I drive to the store and I purchase this Magic collection, which is just like commons and uncommons and crap rares and stuff of that nature, and it literally filled my back seat. So I learned to play Magic with a giant set of commons and uncommons that I got, and I started building all sorts of like terrible decks with all of these bulk cards that I purchased, and I had an absolute blast doing it. Learned a lot about old mechanics by going through and doing that. There's a nostalgia trip. All right, so guess I'll play a Cavern here on the off chance that I'm still alive and I get to draw a P and K. And I'll cast this Recruiter. And we're probably not clocking my opponent before I kill them, so we need to do something to try and win the game. So that's probably Stoneforge plus Jitte. And it's not great. Or we could just get Revoker and shut off the draw engine. Like, we're super dead to a natural order if my opponent has natural order anyway. So shutting off that engine might be better. Like, if I get a Stoneforge Mystic and I get a Jitte, I can't actually connect with it on the current board anyway because of the Wirewood. So I'll get a Revoker. Oh man, that's right. I also wrote articles for Battlezone games as sort of their legacy guy. They were okay articles. Like they're not anywhere close to the quality that I'm writing now. But I learned a lot by doing it, and you know, having a regular commitment to write for was nice. I wrote some pretty stupid parody articles, as well as a handful of articles examining metagames. And alright, so my opponent's going to try to glimpse me off. Those decks were from Kamigawa and Cold Snap, by the way. Yeah, they were. So that's how D&T started, digging through a giant $40 bulk collection and picking out the crappy white dudes? No, man. So, like, I started building really weird decks because, like, that's what happens when you get a bunch of, like, 10 to 15-year-old commons and uncommons. So, like, I had a Shadow deck where all my guys were unblockable, and, like, I had a discard deck with, like what was it, Ravenous Rats and Hymn to Turok. And I was very fond... Oh, there's a guy's cradle. We're super dead. I was very fond of, what was it? I think it was Hermit Crab and some enchantment you could put on it. And, like, you could untap the Hermit Crab for 1 blue mana and, like, ping. And, There were a lot of really bad decks when I first started playing. Really, really bad decks. The end of the story is that he had a drink and then beat everyone in Melee. That sounds about right. About half of those nights ended in Rock Band, to be fair. Or I guess it was Guitar Hero at the time. Freed from the real? That sounds right. Was there something called Hermetic Study? Hermetic Study? Yeah, Hermetic Study. Yeah, I put Hermetic Study on a crab and tried to, like, bleed people out. That was really fun. So, the starter decks that I was playing with, were really fun. They weren't, like, the most quality Magic decks or anything, but I loved them. Like, they had the Ripple mechanic in them, which most of you have probably never heard of, because it's not really constructed viable. But when you go and cast a spell, you get to look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the Ripple number, and then see if you have any cards in that same slot that have the same name, and if they do, you get to cast them for free. And so you can, like, keep rippling into more Ripple guys. So we played with some Surging Sentinels, and sometimes you got a bonus Surging Sentinel. That was really sweet. And then the other deck, oh my god, crop rotation, you get more guys, Cradle. Alright. Opponent gets a just end it all. But my opponent might just, like, play a Nissa or something and untap the Cradle and keep going. Anything could happen at this point. Alright, there's the natural order. Alright. We're super dead. I mean, we were already super dead, but now we're super dead right now. Alright. So, Orzhov Pontiff. This is your time to shine. Containment Priest, get in here. Aethersworn Canonist, you're solid. Cataclysm, you're probably bad, but you might be getting in here too. Path to Exile is a card that we can consider depending on how many cuts we have. So Pia and Kieran is pretty terrible. My opponent can probably go wider than just, like, the number of creatures that I can play to stabilize the board. Like, it's technically a removal spell, but it's My opponent says, "Were you reading Phil's article? I'm guessing you were on red-white taxes." Spoiler. I am Phil. Oh, I need to capitalize that am. I am Phil. I want to take these Thalias out of the deck. They're, relatively speaking, garbage. And now what do I want to do? Like, Path isn't great. It can disrupt the Wirewood engine, which is nice. Like, it is some early interaction. I don't really love Path, and I don't really love Cataclysm. So someone in the chat says cut Wingmare. Wingmare flies. That matters. Like, Wingmare and Flickerwisp are pretty weak. I don't love Path because I don't want to use it on any mana dorks. I only want to point it at cards named Wirewood Symbiote in most cases. It's also not great if I'm going to keep Magus of the Moon in the deck. I'll rock this. I would like to play first. So I have an Aether Vial, Stoneforge, Flickerwisp hand, with no ability to cast this Swords to Plowshares. 2 lands away, and they have to be white lands from casting this Cataclysm. Either vial's really good, but I don't think good enough that it makes me want to keep this hand. Like, this hand's really sketchy. I'll ship this. Remember that one time where you were playing Omnoth in EDH? There was a time when I did that against a Risk deck, and you had a huge guy versus a million tokens, but no one can win. Yes, that was miserable. Do I want to keep this hand? This hand's terrible. It needs a white land on the top or we're dead. But if it has the white land on the top, I have tools that can make me win this matchup. What is my 5 like that's better than this? It has to be like land, Canonist Plow, or like land, removal spell, Stoneforge, something else. This is worse than the first hand, but probably better than a 5. Reluctantly keep. Put on top. Well, the good thing about going to 5 against L's is that you're losing anyway, so the mold of 5 isn't even all that bad. Yeah, that's fair. Thoughts about that 3-mana Pseudo-Wrath from Rivals of Ixalan? Super interesting. It is a really cool card. I don't know that it is good enough, but it certainly has my attention. Starstreak, if you would remind me the name of that card, I'd be happy to look that up for chat and talk about it a little bit more. Give my opponent the opportunity to trade 2 bodies for this Aethersworn Canonist. If they would like to do that, that's wonderful. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position where I can wasteland their Dryad Arbor due to the Quirion Ranger. But if my opponent goes and activates the Quirion Ranger, targeting the Dryad Arbor, I might be able to wasteland it. Slaughter the Strong, thank you. So again, I'm going to offer my opponent a trade for 2 of their bodies for this Canonist. I have a backup Canonist here. Alright. Opponent, you get to Abrupt Decay that one, but I get to deploy another. Alright, opponent, what do you got going on over there with your 3 mana? Green Sun Zenith, X equals 3. Ah, Rex Sage to blow up Canonist. Now I'm sad. So if I miss on land, it's very likely that I will just die to my opponent aggroing me out, even if they have literal nothing else in their hand. It's possible this is a position where I'm supposed to get the Batterskull instead of the Jitte to try to stabilize the board for a couple of turns. But assuming my opponent bricks and has nothing, this Jitte can be pretty sweet. I'll still get the Jitte. Like, now that I have a 1-2 in play, 3 of my opponent's creatures can't attack, so I'm not actually that under the gun. So, for any of you who haven't seen Slaughter the Strong before, it reads, each player chooses any number of creatures he or she controls with total power 4 or less, and then sacrifices all of the other creatures he or she controls. So that's a pretty unique effect. It's a little bit narrow, and it won't always be good, sort of like Cataclysm won't always be good, but it has very high potential upside. I'm actually going to play out this Ether Vial here, rather than put the Jitte in play, which might seem kind of weird. But I don't think my opponent is going to kill me immediately. I feel like I have time. Like, my opponent had plenty of mana to do something game-ending on the previous turn, so they might just have something like an Abrupt Decay in their hand. Yep. And now that hits my Stoneforge rather than my Jitte, which is great. And my idea that I'm not necessarily dead seems to be affirmed. Does my opponent have another Decay? Nope, they just randomly made a black for Green Sun. And this will get a Wirewood, and then they can start bouncing this Rex Sage to ruin my life. Famous last words, I feel like I have time. Sounds about right. Yeah. Alright. So our current line involves drawing lands for both of the next 2 turns. We're halfway there now, and then casting this Cataclysm. This Recruiter will go and get us a Containment Priest. Alright, my opponent has decided to get aggressive. So how do I punish them for this? I can't, really. Because whatever I play, they're going to bounce. So what do I want them to bounce? What do I want them to have in the hand? Quirion Ranger, probably. It's super unfortunate that it was a fetch land. Because now if my opponent's paying attention, this Cataclysm doesn't actually win the game. Maybe that was a reason to block Rex Sage. But we can play hoping my opponent is bad. Cataclysm to send a message, I agree. But we're dead. Like, all my opponent has to do is keep either Reclamation Sage or Nettle Sentinel, and I die. And this is why Cataclysm isn't great against elves. Like, yes, I'm going to take out a whole bunch of my opponent's stuff, but it's not enough. Alright, looks like my opponent is keeping Reclamation Sage. I will concede. Alright, we're not supposed to beat elves, so that's fine. Alright, so we're on the play, and we lost, and we're on the play, and we lost again. Can they keep a 1/1 and the Dryad? Yeah, that would absolutely work. So you get to select something that is a creature and something that is in a land. So you could pick a 1/1 creature like Wirewood Symbiote for your creature, and then Dryad Arbor as your land. And that is something that is 100% viable. Hola, thanks for stopping in. So for those of you who don't know me and who are new, my name is Phil Gallagher, Death and Taxes enthusiast, and we are currently playing Red, White, Black, Death and Taxes, the black just being for an Orzhov Pontiff in the sideboard, who didn't show himself properly in that game to kill all of the elves, but that's fine. We're trying to break even for this league. We're playing against Arctic 313. We have no results for them, so we will just keep a reasonable hand. This hand has a Stoneforge as a first turn 2 play. It has a port, it has a Magus and a Recruiter. Like, there's lots of tools here. It's not necessarily the strongest against any particular deck, but this is a fine hand. So even if it was a non-fetch, they could keep Sage and Arbor and still have lethal. Yeah, but that requires my opponent seeing that line. And I think there's a fair chance that my opponent could miss that. So this Aether Vial draw is interesting. Like, I could just play Aether Vial here, thinking that this Magus of the Moon is going to be really, really good against whatever my opponent is doing. Although just, like, Stoneforge Mystic getting Batterskull, making them have a removal spell is probably fine as well. The issue is that if I don't Vial this turn, then next turn if my Stoneforge lives, I Recruiter. If my Stoneforge lives, I get to Vial and Stoneforge. But if my Stoneforge dies, then I Aether Vial and Port. This is a slow hand where having this Vial in play might be really, really good. So, like, playing Stoneforge is the better play overall. But I really just want to have this Vial in play. I have a lot of gas. So I'm essentially taking a turn off to set myself up for the later turns of the game. I'm intentionally giving up a little bit of tempo. But for example, if my opponent spends a turn using an Abrupt Decay on this Ether Vial, then I sort of hit tempo parity back. Oh, I missed a comment for the last match. They could probably have picked random things and still won the game. I agree. Like the Elves matchup is so lopsided that, ooh, my opponent looks to be doing like Maverick-y things. So I can recruit her for Mom this turn. I can just Stoneforge and hold up Swords to Plowshares. Kind of weird that my opponent kept their hand and has done nothing. Like, they kept their 7. I can recruit her for Thalia to, like, put mana pressure on. I want a Stoneforge. I want to get Jitte. Like, Batterskull would probably be better in the dark here, but, like, my opponent has to have some sort of removal spell. Like, they have to have some reason to keep the hand that they kept. Tundra. Interesting. Alright, I accept your Swords to Plowshares. So Chad, is my opponent on like a Deathblade deck? What do you think? Deathblade seems reasonable. It seems kind of weird that they'd keep a hand that wouldn't have a mana accelerator or a cantrip, though. Yeah. Like, I wonder if my opponent is new to their deck. Like, they don't have any 5-0 finishes, so, like, maybe they're a new player. They're also going pretty slowly here. Like, I'm ahead of them on clock, and I've been chatting with all of you. And they've just been thinking about their plays, which so far have included fetch swords. Alright. My opponent's got something going on. I see like a Leovold. Tireless Tracker, just throwing that out there. Well, that's getting Swords to Plowshare. And I don't actually know what my opponent is playing, chat. Yeah, this Magus is gonna be sweet. So I can just double port my opponent, which is not the worst. But in the face of not knowing what my opponent is doing, I would like to give them the opportunity to cast some spells so I know what they're playing, because this Magus probably is going to end the game almost immediately when it resolves. So I think I'm going to Recruiter for Thalia and then put in this Thalia with Caracas backup. And if my opponent counters this, so be it. Alright, my opponent has F6'd. Domain Jank. Very possibly. But if they're domain, they haven't shown us red yet. Tribal Flames burn. Go, go, go. Alright, chat. Probably caught him with his pants down there. Guess I'll just cast some stuff. That sweet Pyroclasm mana. Oh man, we turned on the ability for them to cast Tribal Flames. What was I thinking? Alright, chat. We saw Swords to Plowshares, Tireless Tracker, and Not Red Lands from my opponent. What are they playing? What are we boarding for? I have no flippin' clue. Like, is it a Deathblade list that happens to just run a random Tireless Tracker? Is it Jank? Is it a Life from the Loam deck? Could be anything. I am legitimately unsure what to board for. That doesn't happen a lot. So we're gonna try to find decks using Tireless Tracker in Legacy and see if there's anything other than lands. Alright, so we're gonna search for Tireless Tracker and Tundra. What do we have? No results. Great. In before Nick fit with Scarab God just because. Yeah, I know, even, like, Leovold Maverick? Okay. I like Leovold Maverick. Leovold Maverick that also has Tireless Tracker. Let's board for a Maverick deck. So let's board in Sword of War and Peace. Let's board in these. Guess that. Oh man, it's super bad if we're wrong though, and like we pull out these Thalias and they're actually Maverick. So like maybe I don't board in the Relic Warder. Like maybe that's hedging too much that it's Maverick, and I just board in some additional removal and an extra sword. Maybe my opponent has True Name though, and I need this Pontiff. I guess I board out this P&K? We're revisiting sideboarding after this game, chat. It's good enough. Alright, I have a hand with some stuff in it. So in the absence of not knowing what our opponent is playing, we keep those hands. So we are playing against our 3-1-3. Game 1, nope, he does nothing. Dies to Magus. Hey chat, do you think my opponent has another basic? I don't. I really don't think they're going to have another basic. It's super bad if they do. But how are they playing all those colors and getting more than one basic in their deck? They probably don't have another basic. I want to get him. Show me your other basic. Show it to me. Alright. They had another basic. That's bad. Oh, my opponent has Crucible Snake. Well, we're going to get Wastelanded into Oblivion. That's super unfortunate. So in the face of potential infinite wastelands, I guess we try to slip a Batterskull into play before everything hits the fan. Yeah, my opponent is on a Maverick deck with blue, and they are probably going really heavy on the toolbox package with Green Sun Zenith, and that's why we saw the Tireless tracker. Oh man, Pride Mage too. We're pretty dead. Yeah, we're gonna get Wasteland locked by this snake. But why did we see the keep in their last hand? Yeah, I agree with that. Like, if their strategy was, I'm not going to mulligan this hand so my opponent gets really confused during sideboarding and I can win game 2, then sure, that line was fine. But otherwise, I can't see any reason to keep that previous hand. Oh, and swords for the mom. Alright, everything went wrong this game. Everything absolutely went wrong this game. So I'm not going to concede this one yet, because if I draw like a fetch land on this next turn, I can just take 4 this turn, 4 the following turn, and then deploy the Batterskull. And then my opponent has to give up the Pride Mage in order to do that. And like, maybe I live, question mark. Or like I can draw Swords to Plowshares for the Crucible Snake. Alright, Plains is a draw. That's good. Not good enough, but fine. Just hoping my opponent shows us a couple more cards. I'd like to have a little bit better idea of what's going on. Like I think we've confirmed Maverick. With Leovold. So it's the Plowshares now too? Alright. Alright. We're done. Alright. So we really lost game 2 to poor sideboarding. Alright, so now we get a chance to sideboard again. If my opponent is going to have a bunch of things like Knights and the Crucible Snake, we want Rest in Peace. I'm not entirely convinced that my opponent is going to have a Stoneforge package. I think they might be like way heavier on the Green Sun package instead. Still think Thalia is bad. P and K is probably too ambitious with my opponent trying to wasteland me. So what comes out? Probably trim one piece of equipment. Like, Sword of Fire and Ice is not great. It's fine. But I'd much rather be able to deal with opposing creatures or get protection. If my opponent has 2 basics, these Path to Exiles aren't the best. And Blessed Alliance might be a little mana ambitious. I guess I can lop the Wingmare first. It's not great. And Pontiff is probably ambitious. Like, my opponent might have some Noble Hierarchs in there. And some Dryad Arbors. But a lot of their threats are going to get bigger than -1/-1 being able to deal with them. I guess I need to put 1 card back. I guess it's the Blessed Alliance. So my game plan is to play a removal-heavy game and hope that Crusader, Magus, or Palace Jailer will go and take over the game, or my equipment. That all sounds reasonable. I don't like bringing in Containment Priest here. It shuts off my Vials, and I care about my Vials more than I care about my opponent's Green Sun Zeniths. This hand is a little weak, but I will go ahead and keep it. We have effectively a basic land for this Rest in Peace. Really hoping my opponent just leads on, like, fetch, basic, Deathrite. Alright, well this is super awkward. We drew the Magus of the Moon, but we only have 1 white source. It's white/red source. My opponent has this Noble Hierarch too. So I'm going to fetch for stability of white mana and cast this Rest in Peace. My opponent probably needs to retap their mana for something because they have all the colors over there. Well, awkward. The second Rest in Peace is way worse than the first. I think the opponent just failed to cast a Leovold and felt bad. Maybe. Like, they played a Caracas. Okay, this Swords to Plowshares is decent. So when my opponent goes in and attacks with the Knight, I'll Swords it and effectively get a Time Walk on that end. If we can stabilize the board a little bit, we will take over this game. Alright, well, my opponent's going for some lands. Alright, my opponent is going for a Marsh Flats to deal themselves some extra damage. And not grow the Knight. Oh, Leovold. Okay. So, if I want to remove something other than the Leovold, I can get away with not giving my opponent a card here. But if my opponent starts crashing in with this giant frickin' Leovold that is a 5/5, that's not great for me. I could get rid of the Quasali Pride Mage right now. But I have so much removal in my deck, and if I don't get rid of the Leovold right now, my opponent can protect it with Caracas, and that'll be really annoying. So I'm going to let the Leovold stick and then get rid of it. Yeah, Leo is going to Farmtown. There was an argument for, like, swordsing the Noble Hierarch with the Leo on the stack. That way if I draw Magus, I can completely cut my opponent off mana. But there's no, like, guarantee that I'll actually get to stabilize the board this game. We have tons of live draws in our deck. Oh no, Swords to Plowshares. Like, lands are decent draws, removal spells are decent draws. Stoneforge Mystic, not the best. Oh, this is so much mana. What's happening? Oh no. We're dead. We're dead. We can't beat that right now. I guess if I drew a Caracas and my opponent animated it and I got to bounce it for free, that'd be fine. So we're currently playing for my opponent to mess up. We're dead if my opponent just plays correctly. Like, if my opponent just, like, starts crashing in with his Gideon and tries to kill us, we're in great shape. But if they play more conservatively, and they just, like, attack in with one guy, we maybe have a shot. Yeah, so we're super dead now. Oh, does my opponent have a removal spell too? Oh, Zealous Persecution. Alright, with gusto. Very, very dead. Alright. So game 3, why did we really lose? What was sort of the defining thing there? Probably missing our land drops. So we mulliganed and then missed land drops. That's kind of what happened there to lead to our loss. That's unfortunate. All right, so we went an unimpressive 2-3 in this league, so we didn't break even this time around with this deck list. That doesn't necessarily mean that the deck list is bad or that some of the things I'm trying out are bad. You know, when you just like play a league and it doesn't work out, you don't get a lot of data. It's by looking at a handful of leagues over time that you get a better feel for what this deck is actually like. So here's what we played tonight. I liked most of what we had going on here. The Pontiff might be a little too hard on the mana to justify, but I didn't hate having the Blessed Alliance in the deck. I didn't hate having the Crusader over here. Like, a lot of the things that we tried out weren't necessarily bad. The league just didn't work out for us. What would have happened if you played Plateau and just jammed Magus turn 3? We would have been maybe in worse shape, honestly, because we only had the one fetch land, so we had to choose whether to get a basic or whether to get a plateau. And if we play the Magus and we don't have any white sources, we're left with only 3 draws to white for the rest of that game. So we have to like beat their board with Magus and Revoker and Equipment as probably the only things that we'll cast for the rest of the game unless we get an Ether Vial. And we'll probably just die to their Exalted things, and in all honesty. Like, even if we take the risky line and we expose that Plateau to Wasteland, it's very possible that we still don't win. Like, if we drew a Stoneforge that game that we could cast, and then we could start Flicker Wisping that for value, and we hit that land drop, like, maybe things work out, but, a lot of things didn't go well there. I think that matchup was a very good matchup, but we threw away game 2 to not knowing how to sideboard because our opponent just did nothing in game 1 and we didn't know what they were playing, which was sort of unfortunate. All right. Thank you all for joining me tonight. It's about 10:30 now, so I'm not going to start up another league tonight. Either either probably Wednesday or Thursday night, I'll stream again. I'll post in the usual places once I figure out what I'm doing. Thank you all for joining me tonight. Sorry this one didn't work out so well.